Well, these opiates, right, these drugs that are, derived from the opium poppy, are acting somewhere in the central nervous system to produce all of these various effects. So the opiate story, in terms of discovering where the receptors are, is interesting because the receptors for these drugs were found before the neurotransmitters that actually typically act at these receptors were identified. So we found, we knew that drugs acted somewhere in the brain, so we found out where they acted. We found the specific receptors that will be, stimulated by these drugs. But then we asked the question, well, what's typically stimulating them? In the absence of drugs, why do we have these receptors in the first place? So 3 distinct receptor subtypes were identified. This shows you a brain, right, a scan of a brain, and these are locations where these receptors are actually found. These are mu receptors. These are opiate receptors. There are 3 types. There's mu, delta, and kappa receptors, and they each have their own sort of unique distribution. Mu and delta are pretty similar. Kappa is a little different. What's interesting is that there are significant sex differences in terms of distribution of these receptors, and a lot of studies earlier, federally funded studies, were done on men and without the inclusion of women in terms of how these drugs influenced pain and relieved pain. And it was found that, sometimes a drug that works quite effectively in men is probably not the best drug for use in women. So, since that time now, equal numbers of men and women must be included in most federally financed studies. Unsurprisingly, these receptors are found in areas that are associated with analgesia, with relief of pain. Also, in brainstem regions that are important for control of breathing, because remember, they can depress respiration, coughing, nausea, right? These are all brainstem regions. And also pleasure. So there's going to be, some of the targets of that mesolimbic system, like the nucleus accumbens, are rich in receptors that respond to opiates.